Here is how the lives of some of the wealthiest people behind bars unfolded. Today, we will take a look inside prisons that millionaires and crime bosses quite literally tailored to themselves. From a cell created for one man and his inner circle, possibly the most expensive in history, to those who ran an entire prison like their own private enterprise and did whatever they wanted there. Now let us move from the world of drug lords to the world of music and the stage. Juan Gabriel, whose real name was Alberto Aguilera Valadez, is a legend of Mexican music. His work became part of Mexican culture, and during his lifetime, his fortune was estimated at over $200 million. But before becoming a millionaire and a stage star, he went through a very dark period: prison. In 1969, he was imprisoned in the notorious Lecumberri prison, one of the most terrifying in Mexico. He was accused of theft. At that time, he still did not have the money that later made him one of the richest music stars in history. At first, he was placed in an ordinary cell, without comforts, without luxury, without special conditions. But his charisma and talent literally began changing his fate even behind bars. When the guards and prisoners heard him sing, they relaxed and realized that a future star stood before them. His voice became an outlet for them. The wardens liked his singing so much that over time he was transferred to a more spacious and comfortable cell, where he had clean clothes, a comfortable mattress, and extra privileges that the others did not have. While the others ate ordinary prison food, cheap and tasteless, Juan Gabriel began receiving special meals. Guards brought him products from outside: meat, tamales, sweet pastries, and good coffee. He became the prison's main singer, giving small improvised concerts for the guards and influential inmates. In time, he was allowed to have a guitar so that he could not only sing but also create music. His talent reached far beyond the prison walls. Important people on the outside began talking about him. It is believed that high-ranking officials took a personal interest in him and ensured he had special protection within the prison. It was precisely thanks to the connections he made behind bars that in 1971 he was helped to get out before the end of his sentence. After that, he signed his first major music contract. In 2016, Juan Gabriel died, leaving behind a musical legacy and a multi-million-dollar fortune. The irony is that his time in Lecumberri prison, which at first was a true nightmare, ultimately became a springboard to world fame. Now let us move into the world of big football. Robson de Souza, better known as Robinho, is a star of Brazilian football who played for Real Madrid and Milan. Over the course of his career, he accumulated a fortune of around $50 million. In 2022, he was sentenced to prison time in Brazil in connection with a gang rape case that occurred in Italy in 2013. But the prison he was sent to was nothing like the place ordinary people are usually sent. He was sent to a prison known as the Prison of Celebrities. Former footballers, politicians, and influential figures are held there. The inmates live in spacious, clean cells, have access to recreation areas, and even to spaces that resemble leisure zones more than prison blocks. Unlike ordinary prisoners, Robinho can receive food prepared by his family and brought from outside, traditional Brazilian dishes, grilled meat, and homemade desserts. He takes part in internal football tournaments where his talent commands respect even from the most serious criminal authorities. This gives him round-the-clock protection because gang leaders find it beneficial to have such a person beside them. He has access to libraries, television, and video games. He can do agricultural work in the prison garden. In essence, he can spend almost the entire day outdoors and in the sun under the guise of work without feeling as confined as a typical inmate. But the most unusual thing is the local analog of Tinder. In this prison, there is a system very similar to a dating app. Inmates get acquainted with people through photos and letters, and then women can come to them for intimate visits in a format resembling conjugal visits. And most importantly, this can happen practically without limitation whenever the inmate wants. Although formally he is in prison, Robinho's life is very comfortable compared with that of ordinary inmates. He makes maximum use of the flexibility of the Brazilian penitentiary system, and adding to that his money and fame, lives in a way many people on the outside cannot afford. Essentially, he continues to lead a privileged life, simply with a different official address, a prison one. Rolando Florian Felix, the true king of luxury in the Jaio prison. Rolando Florian Felix was a Dominican drug lord who headed one of the largest networks trafficking illegal substances in recent decades. Before his arrest, he managed to amass a fortune estimated at around $100 million. It was precisely this money and his influence that allowed him to turn his cell in Najayo prison into a set of genuine private luxury apartments. By the time he was finally sent behind bars, he was already prepared to live no worse than he had on the outside. He had taken care in advance to secure the goodwill of judges and prosecutors. Bribes were handed out in bundles, the sentence turned out to be relatively lenient, and most importantly, on the day of his downfall, he already had inside the prison everything he had managed to acquire on the outside, only in a compact prison version of luxury. His cell was equipped with air conditioning so that he would never suffer from the heat. A 42-inch plasma television hung on the wall. Next to it stood a refrigerator filled with delicacies and expensive food that he could eat at any time, as though he were staying in an elite all-inclusive hotel. The furniture was made of mahogany, massive, expensive, and custom-made. The bed was enormous, king-sized, and in no way inferior to those found in the finest luxury hotels in the world. He also had a personal collection of books and paintings, making the cell resemble the study of a wealthy collector more than the living quarters of a prisoner. Unlike the other inmates, who ate whatever the prison provided, often food brought in garbage cans, half-rotten, or simply disgusting in taste, Florian Felix never used the prison kitchen. He had personal chefs right inside the prison. They cooked anything he desired. If he wanted black caviar, no problem. If he wanted lobster, it was already boiling. It was said that he ate lobsters, Japanese steaks, exquisite Dutch cheeses, and drank elite wines, spending about $1,000 a week on food alone. While other prisoners fought over a portion of beans, he lived at the culinary level of a 5-star restaurant. He had access to the internet. He could play on gaming consoles that were bought outside and smuggled inside through bribed guards. They were connected to his television, and he played calmly while lying on his bed. He listened to whatever music he wished, most often salsa and trap, and could watch any television channels thanks to a satellite dish that gave him access to television and entertainment programs. He kept up with the news as though he were not in prison at all. But the most astonishing thing was the parties. He held private celebrations right inside the prison. Alcohol flowed like a river. Women, live music, dancing, all of this was part of his prison life. Through the guards, Florian organized parties with live musical performances and all-night revelry. Not a single police officer dared say anything. He had privileged visitations. He did not have to wait until Sunday and for 1 hour of family visitation like everyone else. In essence, he turned his cell into a luxury apartment. He could receive guests outside the established schedule, including frequent intimate visits. According to estimates, he spent from $3,000 to $5,000 a week solely on paying models and sex workers who came to the prison to meet him. It was reported that both professional models and women with whom he arranged secret dates visited him. Thanks to his millions, Florian bribed the guards and received any privilege he wanted. If someone inside the prison displeased him or broke his rules, he simply gave the order, and the police, along with other prisoners, would subject that person to a brutal beating. Inside the prison, he quickly became the top leader in the maximum security blocks. He controlled part of the prison's internal organization as though it were his own private structure. But despite his influence and money, in 2009 he was shot dead right inside the prison during a conflict with one of the penitentiary system's employees. His death exposed the monstrous level of corruption and the luxurious regime in which he had lived for years. For society, this came as a shock. Only after his death did people officially see the full scale of the lawlessness. He remained in history as a man who did whatever he wanted in prison solely because he had money. Next comes a prison that looks more like a criminal resort. San Antonio Prison on the tourist island of Margarita in Venezuela became a symbol of extreme corruption and complete inmate self-government. Here, the prisoners turned the prison into their own private resort, where money and power decided absolutely everything. The main master of this resort was Teofilo Rodriguez, known as El Conejo, meaning rabbit. He was a crime boss with a multi-million-dollar fortune, and he turned the prison into a place where luxury and every kind of vice reigned. While ordinary Venezuelan prisons were in horrifying condition, with inmates literally dying from poverty, unsanitary conditions, and violence, San Antonio lived by entirely different rules. Inside the prison, there was a huge pool area where inmates relaxed on hot days as though they were at an elite resort. The cells of high-ranking inmates were furnished with huge beds, plasma televisions, and air conditioners, creating a sharp contrast with the inhuman conditions in other prisons of the country. Alcohol, relatives, models, sex workers, and wives entered the prison practically without limitation. The wealthiest inmates could order food from other countries, bringing in seafood, imported steaks, and exclusive desserts. Barbecues and feasts were regularly organized inside, things that most prisoners in the world could not even dream of. The alcohol there was premium, from elite whiskey to expensive champagne. The prison became famous for its private parties to which famous musicians and women were invited for the entertainment of high-ranking inmates. Prisoners had free access to firearms and mobile phones. They controlled money flows, bought services, bribed officials, and in fact ran the entire system from within. It got to the point that some prisoners could leave the prison during the day for business and calmly return at night simply to spend the night. In 2016, after the death of El Conejo, the Venezuelan government finally intervened, dismantled his power, and took the prison under control. In 2017, the prison was closed, leaving people only with the memory of how, for several years, a handful of criminals ran an official prison, turning it into a symbol of injustice and impunity. Let us continue with another prison emperor, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. He was the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful drug lords in the world. At the height of his power, his fortune was estimated at more than $12 billion. During his numerous arrests in Mexico, his influence allowed him to live in conditions ordinary prisoners could not even dream of. While imprisoned in Puente Grande, his cell was equipped with a plasma television, and he himself had several mobile phones in order to communicate with his family, keep track of what was happening, and continue running the cartel directly from prison by giving orders over the phone. He had a refrigerator filled with delicacies and a private bathroom, which in itself is an enormous luxury by prison standards. While ordinary prisoners ate standard prison food, El Chapo received premium steaks, seafood, exquisite desserts brought from Italy, and special drinks, which he consumed either alone or in the company of his closest associates. Most often, he drank cognac and expensive champagne as though he were not in prison but in a private club for millionaires. He had access to music, satellite television, and even a small private gym where he kept himself in shape. In addition, he was allowed to receive numerous visitors. Women and relatives came to him without strict limitations. El Chapo had long become a legendary figure, and the entire prison knew about him. Among his guests, according to rumors, were famous models, television hosts, and simply very beautiful women. The guards treated him nothing like an ordinary prisoner. Many of them quite literally waited on him, carried out errands, and were entirely at the disposal of one of the most dangerous and wealthy criminals on the planet. At a certain point, his influence became so great that he could bribe officials, controlling not only his own prison, but also other detention facilities across Mexico. He gave orders to punish those prisoners who failed to meet his conditions, did not pay the required sums, or refused to obey. Not only they themselves, but also their families were under threat. He felt so confident that at one point he simply decided to escape. But before disappearing, he managed to organize more than 40 parties inside the prison with alcohol, models, music, and days-long revelry accompanied by live performances. The entire prison turned into a nightclub. In the end, he was extradited to the Supermax prison ADX Florence in the state of Colorado. There, all his privileges vanished. Since then, for more than 7 years, he has been held in solitary confinement under harsh restrictions and without any luxury whatsoever. According to his family and lawyers, he is regularly subjected to psychological and physical pressure. He is awakened at night, deprived of sleep, doused with cold water, and attempts are made to break his psyche by reporting false news about relatives. It is said that he was humiliated, beaten, and driven to a state of profound exhaustion. His mental state is believed to be gradually deteriorating and his physical health worsening due to constant pressure. He remains in that prison today, and many are convinced that he will spend literally the rest of his life there without ever seeing normal sunlight again. And here's an example of a prison where there is no corruption and no criminal luxury, but there is another kind of luxury: humane treatment. Bastøy Prison in Norway shows how a well-organized system can give inmates decent conditions without bribes and criminal schemes. It is located on an island in the Oslo Fjord and houses some of Norway's most dangerous criminals, including murderers and rapists. But the approach there is built on the idea of rehabilitation and quality of life, not simply punishment. Instead of classic concrete cells, inmates live in wooden houses with separate rooms. There are no high walls or barbed wire. Prisoners can move freely around the island as long as they follow the rules, like residents of a small village. Instead of an ordinary prison cafeteria, they cook for themselves using fresh, high-quality products. There are gardens and farms on the grounds where they grow part of the food with their own hands. Healthy and balanced nutrition is maintained, as for people who still have their whole lives ahead of them. And that is not all. In winter, inmates can go skiing. They have access to an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They can ride horses and bicycles in the fresh air. There are tennis courts and large football fields. In addition, the prison has its own beach where inmates can plunge into the waters of the fjord. The prison offers many creative and cultural activities, from painting to music and theater. Because of all this, many compare Bastøy to a resort hotel. Upon arriving there, a person does not feel as though they are in the hell of a prison. They live almost as if in an ideal world, only with restrictions. It is like paradise for the soul, but with a constant reminder that you are there because of crimes. Many say that it resembles life in a dream apartment, with comforts and freedoms that honest, hardworking people sometimes only dream about. But the most important thing is that this system produces results. The prison has a high rate of successful rehabilitation and a very low rate of repeat offenses. People are helped to learn professions and skills so that after release they can find work and live normal lives. Bastøy is often cited as a successful example of prison reform, and people discuss whether such a system can be introduced in other countries. Write in the comments which of these stories shocked you the most and why. Do you think such conditions in prisons are fair, or does money distort the system too much? And also rate this video with a like or a dislike. Subscribe to the channel and go right now to the previous incredible episodes on the channel about the richest.